Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here. Today I would like to discuss our nerdy influences in life. This episode in particular is dedicated to my father. He's not dead. It was just his birthday was recent, and that's actually what inspired this episode. I was like, just the nerdy things that, whether it's people or, places, even things, it could be something nerdy that you saw that influenced you to become, even nerdier. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be a person, but because it was his birthday, and I was just thinking of like, random topics, thought about the fact that my dad is kind of responsible for me being as nerdy as I am. I would definitely say that I took it, I took his lessons and ran with it. We'll go with that because I'm way nerdier than my dad is. But this is, like I said, dedicated to my dad because starting off with like the base level things that, he kind of influenced me with, it was video games and Star Wars. Those are like the two big things. So for video games, had the Super Nintendo. We played the crap out of the Turtles in Time. I've mentioned that before. Great soundtrack, great game as a whole, all that good stuff. And we played that all the time. We played that. We played all our Super Nintendo games. Double Dragon 5, which is an interesting fighting game. Now that I'm, more informed, about gaming history, Double Dragon 5 is a very odd game. I don't understand why they really made that, but it was Double Dragon and it was still famous. So it was like Double Dragon 5 is just a straight up fighting game with weird characters. But played the crap out of Super Nintendo and stuff, Super Mario World, all that. Had fun with it. Obviously, that's what got me into playing video games. And I've obviously I love games. It's kind of pretty much every single topic that I've done in this little series is pretty much gaming. And most of the stuff that I like to do is games. Games are like my favorite medium. That's my favorite way to experience stories is actually playing them through video games. Even though, of course, I love a good movie and going to the theaters and stuff. But I love video games, and that's because my dad introduced that to me when I was younger, and we would play Super Nintendo all the time, and go out to GameWorks as I was growing up at Great Lakes Crossing, which was I miss GameWorks. I've mentioned that a few times, but man, shout out to GameWorks. It was so cool. You always go to Great Lakes Crossing. That's like all I ever wanted for my birthday was like we go to Great Lakes, eat at Rainforest Cafe most of the time. Sometimes we would actually eat at GameWorks, but most of the time you eat at the Rainforest Cafe, and then right across from Rainforest Cafe used to be GameWorks. I think now it's the Lego thing. I think it's like a whole, I think that's where like the aquarium. It's either a Lego thing or it's the aquarium. One of those two things replaced, sadly, GameWorks, which was amazing. Greatest arcade I'd ever been to. But we would do that all the time and go out to Great Lakes, and a bunch of us would go out there and we would just have fun. So gaming was like the thing that I grew up with because of my dad, and then playing on the PlayStation, and we played a lot of it was mostly like a lot of fighting games because I don't think, admittedly, now that I think about it, I don't think there's actually a lot of like co-op games when you go back to like PS1 era. There's not a bunch I can really think of where it's like, yeah, this was a co-op game. Like most games were fighting games. Like Ninja Turtles was the only one I can really think of where it's like a co-op game. And then other than that, they're mostly like arcade games, of course, but like on console, I don't know if any of the X-Men games, like I can't think of if the arcade ever actually got ported to consoles until like, way down the line. But that's just something random I thought of. Like we always just did like Tekken and stuff like that. So it was always like, our fighting game thing. But always played the games, it was always a good time. And then obviously I, ran with that, and now I play games. My dad hasn't, he has a PS5, which honestly, I feel like he kind of wasted his money on that. If I'm just being completely honest, I feel like he's kind of wasting his money on that. Because he doesn't play it. Like he barely play. He's got like, I think 2 games total. And I'm pretty sure I bought both of them because I was like, oh, these are on sale. Or he's got like 3 games. He has Star Wars, Fallen Order, so he has like the first one. And I'm pretty sure I got him that. Or he just had like a thing or whatever. We ended up getting that because I was like, it's Star Wars, and once again, Star Wars was the other thing. So I was like, I know you'll like a Star Wars game, so you should get this because it's great. And then it was like the combo sale for MK11. Yeah, MK11 and Injustice 2. It was like the combo of both those games with all the DLC for both of them for like, $15-20 or something. And I was like, oh, and you can get like Mortal Kombat and Injustice. So you got like your comic stuff, Mortal Kombat, of course we played Mortal Kombat back in the day, and then, get a Star Wars game. And he hasn't played those. I watched him play Star Wars one time, and it was like crazy. It was like almost infuriating. It was like I was suffering watching him just try to figure out how to play because he hadn't played a game in like 15 years. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is the thing. It was a perfect example of where people are like, oh, games are no big deal. It's like, no, you have to know what you're doing. You can't just jump into a game right now and just instantly know. Like, I can jump into a game and be like, all right, odds are circle is probably going to be crouch or like a dodge or something like that. Left trigger aim, right trigger shoot. L1 will probably pull up a menu, or R1, something like that. Like, we kind of know these things. You click in the sticks to run, that sort of thing. People that haven't played games in 15 straight years don't know that stuff. It's not like the base level of game design is just in their brain where you can just assume like, all right, I'm pretty sure this will do this. Like, people don't know that. People don't know what to look for. Like, let me tell you, the thing, the big, what was it? Like the yellow paint all over the place where that was like bothering everybody. Let me tell you, that would have been real helpful when I was watching him play Star Wars, because he did not know where to go. And I'm like, oh man, it's like just that red beam, it blended in a little too well. It fit within the realm of the actual, construction of the Star Wars world, where it was like, it's just like a red beam that's just kind of there. It all blends together. You don't really know. You don't know that those grates with all the little, the rings in them are what you climb on. It just looks like a grate. Like, you don't know that when you haven't played games in 15 years. That's just like innate game design that you're just like, okay, that's the climbable thing. Like, you can clearly tell. It's so fascinating. I'm telling you guys, it's fascinating. It was like one of those moments where you just look at it and I'm like, man, the yellow paint thing. This was before the yellow paint thing even came up, but definitely something that correlates, where I'm just like, yeah, that's one of those moments where like there's so many people that don't, that just pick up games every once in a while, or they might not pick up that type of game where it's, kind of an action adventure sort of thing where you need to know like, hey, this is how you basically get out of this area. And it kind of needs to be marked for some people. Like, it really does. It really does. It's so fascinating. It was really interesting. And I was like, holy crap. He literally did not get out of the first section by himself. He couldn't do it. And I was like, this is crazy. It's crazy. So, it's just to throw that one out there. Like, but crazy that he buys it. I play it. When I go over there, I'll just play like some random free-to-play stuff. My daughter loves to play Fall Guys. I installed that on there. I put the finals on there just to play. Like, every once in a while when I'm over there, I'm like, it's not helping me do anything, but I'll play it just because I like the game. So I put the finals on there, and I'll hop on some Mortal Kombat a little bit. When I'm there hanging out, and it's just like, man, he doesn't really use it, but he wanted a PS5, so that's what he got. And jumping all the way back in time, to connect back to the Star Wars thing, when I was little, my parents took me to see A New Hope when it was the special edition re-release. And it was actually, it's, first off, it's probably more appropriate to say my dad took me and my mom to go see it, because my mom fell asleep in Star Wars, which, we talk about that, like, how do you fall asleep at Star Wars? But it didn't matter to her. But for me, that was my first theater experience. That was the first time I ever went to a movie theater. That theater is now an Outback Steakhouse. Actually, I think the Outback Steakhouse is gone. It's gone. All that stuff is just destroyed. Anyway, went to that theater, and that was my first, theater going experience. And it was like, holy crap! Like, these explosions are way cooler than Power Rangers. And then I was hooked. That was all it took. It was like, boom, Star Wars infinitely for life. I was hooked on Star Wars. And after that, it was, we went to see all the movies. My dad will never let me live it down. We went to see Phantom Menace, and towards the end of the movie, I had to pee. And so we had to get up and go. And he brings that up like every couple of years. It'll just be like, remember that time you had to pee when we were at the end of Star Wars? I'm like, hey, what can I do? What can I tell you? I've adapted now. I don't drink anything when I go to the movies. I only buy popcorn, and that's it. I don't drink any drinks, because I'm like, I want to see the whole movie. I don't ever, I don't want to miss it, even for myself. I don't want to miss it. And it's like, my bad. That's all I can say is like, it happens, huh? So, I think of that all the time. But saw all the movies, watch the shows and everything. I'm not sure if he's actually caught up on some of the more recent stuff. I think he is, but that's normally like our thing. It was like Star Wars is like the one thing where, whether it's a movie or like the TV shows, that's like the thing that we're always both caught up on. Like, obviously I'm always going to be caught up on it whether I'm doing a review or not. For me, I'm like instantaneously, I know when it's coming out, I know the day it's coming out, I know what time it's coming out. I'm watching Star Wars. And for him, he'll catch up later, but he'll watch it. He'll definitely, like keep up with stuff, or I'll reference it like, hey, did you know this was out, just to let him know, because I'm like, it's a new, cool new Star Wars thing is coming out. So, Star Wars has always been our thing, and we got, like I said, the VHS special editions, watched the crap out of those. When they eventually came out on DVD, it was like, hey, let's get the DVDs of the special editions. We got those. When the Blu-ray came out, obviously this was before the new trilogy came out, so at the time, it was the complete saga. I bought the whole Blu-ray set for him. I don't remember if that was his birthday or like a Christmas gift, but when that came out, that was the thing I got him. I was like, here's like the whole series on Blu-ray and stuff. So I got him that. And every time it's either his birthday or Father's Day, which it's starting to get a little tough, but every year I try to do like only Star Wars cards. It's getting a little rough. It's like, oh man, it's getting hard out here to find like a new type of Star Wars card that I can get. But I try. Like that's the thing. I always try to make it like a Star Wars card because that's like our thing. But Star Wars for sure. Always watch all the shows and keep up. The other show, he definitely never finished it, but a lot of people didn't. It was Supernatural. He actually watched Supernatural for a super long time with me. And he was just like into the show, and then eventually he fell off. 16 effing years of his show. Was like, hey, a lot of people who were, my age when the show came out never finished the show because it was, it went so long. But he was watching Supernatural for a very long time. He watched Supernatural with me. But yeah, definitely as far as like nerdy influences, that was the thing. The two big things for sure were video games and Star Wars specifically. Like anime, I kind of just found, if we're being totally honest, shout out to Kids WB and Toonami, obviously, when it comes to anime and, appreciating that. So those are definitely the nerdy influences there. And, that was something that took a long time for me. And also, just the advancement of the internet and, for me being in 9th grade is when I would say like deep dived into anime, because that was when I had like my first laptop. That was when I was like, oh, like I'm getting into watching shows. And then at that point, that was also the transition. And here's a big thing. That was the big transition moment in Toonami. And a lot of people aren't gonna know this. It depends on how old you are. But for those of you that might be my age or older even, there was an era where they just transitioned to be like, you know what? Here's the actual ending to all these anime. Instead of us just making up crap, here's the actual ending. Here you go. Here's the actual real ending song. And it was definitely a transition, because a lot of shows were so shortened that it would be like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. But it would be like the 30-second version, because that's how, the way we did it in the States. Our commercials were different. So that's, if you ever watch anime, of course, they have like the little thing where the intro happens and then they do like the little 10-second, 15-second thing where they like play the music again, and it's like, oh, that's where they put the sponsors. We obviously don't do that here in the States because our ad times are different. So it was always fascinating to like watch the shows, and then when they hit like that hard transition where it was like, here's like, for some of them, they were the full openings. A lot of them I think were still shortened, but I felt like we got a lot more compared to what we used to. And I think at this point you just get the straight up full opening. Sometimes they don't even do it in English. It depends on the show, honestly. And I respect that. I think that's super cool. Like, you can watch stuff on Toonami and it'll just be like in straight Japanese. Like, here you go. Like I just watched, once again, who knows, I'm dating this show, but the first episode of Lazarus for me just came out, and decent first episode. And when it ended, it was all the Japanese voice cast. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then after the credits went off and everything, then it was, how they do like every other language. The first that popped up was the English voice cast. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like they did the Japanese cast. And I would assume because that's what was on Max, that's how it posted on Toonami as well. Regardless of whether or not it did, for whatever reason, on Max, that's what it is. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But there's definitely a moment in time where I remember, and it was specifically the second Bleach intro. And at that point, they'd already done the transition. And even for some older anime, like I remember Samurai Champloo always had it, but that's definitely one of those examples where it was like so fast. It was like they were shooting through the credits and you got like 30 seconds of that song. But I was like, that song's kind of cool. And then it took forever for me to actually hear like the full version of the Samurai Champloo ending, which is Shiki no Uda, which is like one of my favorite songs in general. That is genuinely one of my favorite songs. I love that song. And it took forever for me to like find that song, because it was like, you hear it for 30 seconds and you're like, that's an interesting song. But I didn't have the internet. Like I was a kid, like, I got 30 seconds of the song that sounds kind of cool. After Samurai Champloo, I don't know how to even look that up. Like that's just not even a thing, when I was actually watching Samurai Champloo, when it, when it was like first airing on Toonami. So it's interesting, getting to that point of, being in high school. And like I said, it was in 9th grade is when the transition hit, where I was like, it was that second Bleach opening, which is Arigato by Homei Kazoku. And I was like, this is a really awesome song. And I like the ending, the first ending as well for Bleach. But I was like, this is a really great effing song. And then I was like, I think I like Japanese music. And I started looking into music, and then that's how I got into like J-pop and J-rock and all that. Like that's how I got into Japanese music, was like finally just looking up the songs on the internet and old school YouTube and just being like, oh, this is the full song. and watching like the actual old music video for, Arigato by Homei Kazoku, which is crazy. And that, that was how that went. So of course, the classic anime influence, but music speaking, because I basically listened to nothing until I was like 13, like genuinely. Like I like Michael Jackson music, and then every once in a while there'd be something that pops up where it's like, oh, I like the beat to this song. Most music I didn't really like. You grow up, and honestly, unless, I grew up in Detroit, so it was like, unless my parents just turned the radio station, which they never did, if you weren't black or singing with a black person, I'd never heard anything you've done in your life. So I didn't hear much. There wasn't a lot of music for me growing up where I was like, I don't really like music. I just don't listen to anything. And then I was like, oh, found Japanese music. And right at that time, right during that era when I was like finally having the ability to like look up music for anime, that's when Guitar Hero 2 came out. I didn't play the first one, but I played the second one at a store. I played it one time, and I played horribly, of course, but it was Message in a Bottle by The Police. And I would never forget that. I heard that song once and played that game and lost horribly, and I was like, I have to buy this game. And once that happened, it was like, oh, rock music. Oh, Detroit is like one of the places known for rock music on earth. Who would have known? I've lived here my whole effing life, never knew any of that crap. But of course, once I finally found it myself, then everyone around me is like, oh, I used to listen to this. Like, well, why didn't anybody like share this music when I was growing up? Because for me, it was just like, if it ain't rap, it don't exist. Like that was kind of my life for 13 straight years. So I kind of had to find music on my own. And thank goodness for me, once again, being a giant nerd to video games, because that's what led me to even really knowing about Rock Band or Guitar Hero. Granted, Guitar Hero blew up so crazy, everyone on earth knew what Guitar Hero was, and then, obviously Rock Band transitioning from that. But definitely that era of, like Guitar Hero is what got me into rock music. Like a lot of people, it was just like, oh, this is the music I actually enjoy. And then at the same time is when I was finally, I had the internet to actually look up music from anime that I'd heard, where it was like, oh, what's that song that I always hear for 30 seconds after the end of Samurai Champloo? And you just type in Samurai Champloo ending, and then it's like, oh, this is beautiful. And then you start finding a bunch of Japanese music. So thank you, internet, because that helped me find music. That was great. But going backwards again, I do, of course, have to reference the nerdy side of things, the nerdy influence that my mother gave me. And for my mother, it was straight up martial arts. Everybody, of course, everybody loves Bruce Lee and stuff like that. My dad does, of course, I think, I have no idea who technically introduced me to The Last Dragon, but I watched the crap out of that. I know my mom probably hates that movie at this point because I made her watch it a million times. I love The Last Dragon. It's currently on Netflix. Just saying, if you need to watch The Last Dragon, you can watch it right now on Netflix. It's on there. But I love The Last Dragon. Of course, martial arts, it was a huge boom in martial arts. That's what led to, admittedly, like even us getting Power Rangers was kind of a part of like the martial arts boom, across the world. So all of that stuff culminated, and then it was just like, here you go, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, especially Jackie, because obviously, unfortunately, of course, Bruce Lee passed away. So Jackie Chan was the one making movies. Jackie Chan and Jet Li, growing up, it was like my mom and I would watch everything we could. Like we were always watching a Jackie Chan movie or a Jet Li movie. If one of them came out with a movie, we were watching it, and we were just loving, like anything martial arts. Like if, any new martial arts movie that I could find that, like isn't overly crazy, admittedly we did watch The Raid because I was like, you're gonna like this, and of course it's insane. If you haven't seen The Raid, please watch The Raid. It's amazing. But it gets a little wild in that movie, but I was like, let's watch The Raid. Like, I think you're gonna like this. And she enjoyed it. Like, she gets real amped up when we're watching like martial arts movies, and it's really funny. But my mom for sure is like the number one influence when it comes to like me being into martial arts so much, is my mom just always wanting to watch, Jackie Chan, or watch, finding like an old Bruce Lee movie. And like I said, once again, mostly Jackie Chan and Jet Li, because it was, obviously current stuff still coming out. So from my mom's side of the fence, definitely the martial arts thing, and I'm still a huge fan of martial arts. I love martial arts movies, and my favorite martial art is actually Muay Thai. I was always into martial arts, and then, like a lot of people, you see Ong Bak, and then as soon as I saw that movie, I was like, that's the one. As soon as I saw it, I was like, that's the martial art that I like the most. Instantaneously, it just fit in my head, just what I enjoyed the most about martial arts, and just like, something about like the strict style of it, and just the intensity of Muay Thai, I really, really love. So that instantly, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I don't know what this is, but it automatically became my number one martial art. And it's still my favorite one to this day. It's like, I still like Muay Thai the most. So just to randomly throw that in, as I do with this channel, just like, here's a random factoid. But Muay Thai is my favorite martial art. But yeah, martial arts was on my mom's side, and then on my dad's side, it was definitely video games and Star Wars. So those are my nerdy influences when it comes to my parents. And then, like I said, of course, the generic thing when it comes to anime was like, yes, kids WB with Pokemon, but of course we didn't really understand it. It was just like, oh, it's just a new cartoon that came out, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and everything else. It was like, you know, you just put Pokemon next to Batman. It's like, it's just all cartoons. And then eventually you start to get to the Cartoon Network side of things and Toonami, and then it's like, no, this is anime. Like, this is a different thing. And it's like, oh, I didn't really understand that before. So getting into that, of course, was definitely Toonami. And yeah, those are kind of the big things. When it comes to, you know, like the other big franchises that I love, as far as, you know, Resident Evil, gotta, you know, obviously throw it in there every chance I get. Obviously that was through video games. Ninja Turtles, I would say, was also through video games because of Turtles in Time, because I've only ever seen like maybe 5 or 6 episodes of like the original cartoon. And I grew up on the movie, at the very least, and this is gonna be crazy, but I grew up on the 3rd movie, all right? Like, that's the one I saw the most. That was the one we had on bootleg. It was totally bootleg, but that was the one I saw the most, because that was the one that we bootleg recorded off of TV one time. So for me growing up, I had the 3rd movie more than I ever had the first 2. Like, who knows how many times, you know, like growing up, that was the only live action Turtles that I had, was only seeing the 3rd film. And I mean, who knows how many times I watched it. I didn't have the other 2 to actually watch at all. So for me, the 3rd movie, you know, has a special place in my heart, as like, I know it's the worst one, but still, I enjoyed it as a kid. You know, it's a soft place in my heart, for sure. Same with the Mario Brothers movie. Just a soft place in my heart, soft place in my heart. But those, I would say, are like my nerdy influences. As far as a Transformers fan, Beast Wars, when I first saw that, that's how I fell in love with Transformers. Beast Wars is my G1. But like, you know, those are like the big franchises for me. And then Back to the Future, I kind of just randomly found, and I was just like, this is awesome. And then that's how I fell in love with that. So just to like randomly talk about like how I got influenced to like love my favorite franchises. Resident Evil, like, I don't know if my dad bought it or my cousin bought it, but one of them bought it, and then I kind of just, you know, I was playing a horror game way too young and fell in love with it. And then I was a dumb kid, because I was like, honestly, I was like 6 years old when I was playing Resident Evil 1, because it was the director's cut, so I was 6. And I couldn't beat it because the puzzles were too hard. And I'm pretty sure, I was thinking about this like a few weeks ago, I'm like, I think it was the clock puzzle, because that one confused me for so long. I had no comprehension of like, look at the picture of the 2 dudes stabbing each other. I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like, I don't think I even knew how to read an analog clock. I was 6. If we're being honest, I probably didn't even know how to do that at the time. So I'm pretty sure it was the clock puzzle that had me stumped. And then eventually, like, my cousin got far in the game, and then I just went off of his save file and beat it. And then that was the thing, and this is like a crazy realization I had like a while ago, where I realized Resident Evil was a game that made me like grow up with the idea of being like, I don't want to do it off of somebody else's work, and I want to be able to like beat the whole game myself. Because when I beat it, I was like, yeah, I beat it, but I genuinely like felt unaccomplished in a sense, and that's what gave me that drive. And I think I've had that ever since I was a kid, because I like used my cousin's save file to beat Resident Evil, and then I was like, it's tainted. It had like a tainted feeling that I beat the game using his save. And so then I eventually, you know, I got smarter, and like my brain developed a little more, and I figured out the puzzles. And that was how I ended up finally beating Resident Evil. And I think that's a part of why it's my favorite franchise. And, you know, obviously that is, you know, Resident Evil, and I think I mentioned this before at some point, but Resident Evil and Nightmare on Elm Street are like the 2 greatest influences I have when it comes to loving horror. Like, Resident Evil obviously being my favorite franchise, and video games being my favorite medium, it blended those 2 things together. Well, obviously it wasn't my favorite at the time, but over however long I was playing the game, and then eventually years and years, it was like, yes, this is my favorite, and then it made horror my favorite. And then Nightmare on Elm Street was just constantly on loop for some odd reason on Channel 50. Back in the day, it was UPN. I don't know what the deal was, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but it was on repeat. I swear, so much I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2. I've never seen a single other Nightmare on Elm Street. I've seen Freddy vs. Jason, but that's about it. That's as close as I've come to seeing a 3rd Nightmare on Elm Street movie. But I've seen 1 and 2 like 100 million times. They were always on TV. It is the weirdest thing in the world. But I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2 a billion effing times just through TV. I've probably seen the actual like rated R version of Nightmare on Elm Street twice, maybe. once. like legit. I've seen the TV version more than I have ever seen that movie uncut. Like dead serious. It's crazy. But those are my influences. Lots of different things obviously make us the nerds that we are today. But I would love to know your influences, whether it's people, places, things. There's not a place that I can think of that was like, this is what made me nerdy because I went somewhere and saw something. It was just, the usual thing. You got your parents that are there. And then, obviously the classic channels, like I said, WB for cartoons and, getting into anime, and then Toonami being like, this is a different thing. It's a little bit different. So those are the influences. And also, like I said, the music stuff, being into games and then getting into Guitar Hero led me to rock, being into anime, of course, led me to Japanese music, naturally. But those are the influences that I can think of. I think that honestly might be like the full breadth of this topic for me. Normally I leave a bunch of stuff out, but I think that's pretty much everything when it comes to this, because you only need those couple of things and then you just branch out from there. So I would love to know your influences. What influenced you to be the nerd that you are today? Like what grabbed you? Person, place, or thing? I would love to know. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.